Green Room. We're here with Pastor Tom Lane. Thank you so much for hanging out with us on Sunday.
Glad
We
to do it.
appreciate it so much.
Excited to do it. Thank you.
So, doing great things. I think I'll say for me, I'm in that generation where it's like I'm either super old Gen Z or really, really young millennial. I'm like right in the middle.
Okay.
And so I feel like for my generation specifically, around my age group, there's this natural desire to do something great with your life.
Yep.
And so in wanting to do that, how do we fight this social media driven world where we can see everyone on display, at least everyone's good things on display? So in attempting to do something great with our life, also battling this comparison of we feel like we're constantly behind because of the great things we see all the time. How do we fight that in an age where we can see everything on display?
Yeah. I think that's one of the downfalls of social media today.
Yeah.
Is it presents the best foot forward of everybody else and then draws us into a comparison.
Right.
And what I think is, um, you know, we just had, I forget if it was we just had the Kentucky Derby.
Yep.
And when a horse runs in the Kentucky Derby, they have these blinders that fit around their eyes,
Yeah.
so that they can't see to the right or the left.
Yeah.
It keeps them from comparing or watching the horse on either side of them. They just look right straight down the track.
Yeah.
And keep in their lane.
Yeah.
Part of it's a discipline that we have to learn, because it is tempting, and it can be very discouraging when you're trying to do what you think God's called you to do. You're being diligent and faithful, but it's not happening.
Yeah.
And you see around you the friends the people that are happening.
Right.
And here's one thing I would say. None of us escape the trap of comparison or the accusation of inadequacy.
Yeah.
Or so even though they put the best foot forward and say, it's just awesome, we're rocking it here, everything's going great, they're in their private moments.
Yeah.
It's not going as great as they say.
Yeah.
Or there are days when it doesn't go as great as they say.
Yeah.
So walk in the tension of celebrating someone's around you, their success, without becoming jealous or envious of what their success is robbing you. One of the things about God and his kingdom is it's not zero sum.
Yeah.
In other words, there's not a limited quantity of God's blessing. So if you're getting blessed, that means there's less blessing for me. No, there's enough. The wealth of God, the blessings of God are enough to cover everybody's lives.
Yep.
And so you don't have to worry or be discouraged.
And so for the person who is, trying to do the right thing, not be like stricken with comparison, they feel like they're doing what God's asked them to do, but they haven't seen it come yet. How do you stay with that focus? And especially nowadays, again, I'll speak to my generation. I feel like I see so many people my age that just pluck themselves up and go somewhere else when it's not working out after a year or 2 years and constantly replanting. But how do we stay determined to stay in the soil long enough to actually see something grow from it?
Yeah. I think the example that our grandfathers and our fathers gave, let me just say this. My dad, out of college, started working in the warehouse at the company that he ended up owning. And he worked there 40 plus years.
Wow.
And it was experience, it was dedication, it was overcoming obstacles that he worked with. And imagine if pick a number every 5 years.
Yeah.
He changed. What happens in that process is every time you change, you start over.
Yeah.
And the sad part of your generation, in my dad's generation and in my generation, we never had get rich quick billionaires.
Yeah, let's invest in GameStop and see it go to 300% next week and see what happens.
And then you sell it out and
Right.
you live the rest of your life on the proceeds.
Yeah.
We never had any of that.
Right.
And you have to fight the urge and the temptation for get rich quick schemes. Faithfulness will win the race.
Yeah. And what would you say? This might be like a really personal question again with my age group.
Yeah.
I see a lot of like entrepreneurship has become this thing that's the goal for everybody, it feels like.
Yeah.
And it feels like in my observation, it's like, well, I just want to do it myself. That's why I'm really going to go and do this thing. And so if everybody's not called to that, which they can't be, I can't believe that. What does it look like to serve someone else faithfully for a long period of time? But also in doing that, I'm also serving what God's calling me to do at the same time.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think when growing up, my thought was the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line.
Mm-hmm.
And so, got saved at 16, felt called to business and thought, I'm going to fulfill my destiny to be a influential business leader, to impact employees, to change a community based on a business platform that God is leading me into, going to provide for me. And then I started working, and I took business transfers, and it sort of got me offline. It's like, what am I doing over here? I don't need this. I'm going to run the business. Why am I doing this? And then another opportunity that took me swung another direction, and they're all on an upward rise, but it's like, I don't understand. And even one day before I left college, I was frustrated being in college, and I said to my dad, why do I need to go to college? I mean, what's the benefit? I know what I want to do. I don't need to go to college to do this.
Yeah.
And he said, I know, but what college will prove is your ability to endure. Okay. So I think that, I think in your generation and maybe younger below you, there hasn't been a mentoring or a development of older generations like mine to say, okay, just sit tight. It'll come. Or a mentoring within a business. When my dad was developing, businesses made a commitment, and they could pay less because I'm going to provide for you for your life, and as long as you work hard here, you'll always have a job.
Yeah.
That's not so today.
Yeah.
And so it puts a pressure on us to say, okay. And I asked my dad one time, how is it that you went from the warehouse to owning your business? And he said, about every 5 years, I was given a new area of responsibility, and I applied myself to each area of those responsibilities to learn, so that 5 years in merchandise, 5 years in the warehouse, 5 years in merchandising, 5 years in sales, 5 years in sales management, 5 years, and he never stopped to ask, why am I doing this? And what he told me is, Tom, apply yourself with all diligence to every assignment that you're given, because the one thing that cannot be taken from you is what you learn. And so I see it as this. I see that God assigns us, moves us different places on his path to fulfilling his plan, his destiny for us, to give us experiences and to bring us into tests. And the length of time that we're in any given assignment is somewhat dependent on if we have learned what he wanted us to learn, gained the experience that we have, and if we pass the tests. And the only way you will really experience that is when you get to a place. So I had these tests and experiences in business transfers that actually got me to Texas.
Yeah.
And then my degree was in accounting. I never used accounting.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, it's so I can read financials when I get to be the, CEO of company. And then I got called into ministry, offered a job as the business administrator. It was the first time I used my accounting skills. It's like, oh,
there it is.
Now I know why I majored in accounting. Yeah. Oh, now I know why I had this experience in sales. Oh, now, and I love this statement. It was Kierkegaard,
mm-hmm.
the Dutch philosopher, that said, life is lived looking forward, but it's understood looking back. And it's true. You get to certain places and you go, oh, that's why.
Yeah.
Oh, I understand.
And it feels like too, in listening to you talk about pursuing that greatness today with God, there can be this immense amount of pressure that we put on ourselves of like, we have to figure it out. And there was a few questions we got from people listening today, just along the lines of like, I think I'm doing what God's asked me to do. I just don't know. Like, how do I know that this is what he's asking me to do? Because I'm really just not sure. So what would you say to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I believe this. I believe this for myself, and I tell this to others that ask me this question, and that is, I think it's impossible to miss what God has for you if the intensity of your desire is to do what he wants. You'll change on a dime. You'll move. You have no hardened expectation that you're putting before God.
Yeah.
That says, if you want me to follow you, God, you need to do. It's like, you just let me know. And so then when you look at an opportunity and you say, well, I prayed.
Yeah.
And so I think calling, it can be an over spiritualized term, but I think what it is an opportunity to meet a need at a point in time. And that is confirmed by others. So over the years, people have come to me and said, hey, I think I'm called to do so-and-so. Okay. Who else sees that in you? Nobody. I think that's what God's put in my heart. And because God put that in my heart, I got to do it.
Yeah.
No. If it's a need at a point in time, it will be confirmed by others who know you and love you, not your friends who might not tell you the truth.
Right.
They want to encourage you and don't want to hurt your feelings, but someone that's in oversight, that then you have to say, okay, I'll do this. My experience in these situations is the challenge is once you say yes, the responsibility will hit you, and it's like, what have I done? Oh my gosh. Maybe you'd understand this in marriage, when you were dating and talking about marriage and or even being parents. It's like, oh yeah, that's no problem. We got this. We can handle this. Marriage is going to be a piece of cake. And then you're there on your wedding day, and it's like, I don't know if I'm ready for this responsibility.
Yeah.
I don't know. Or as a parent,
right,
you bring this little one home from the hospital. It's like, I don't know how to be a parent.
You're gonna let me take this thing home by myself?
Yeah,
Are you serious?
Exactly. My son had twins, and we go down to visit him. He was living in Houston, and we go down to visit him. And the nursery, he's in there seeing his kids, and the nurse in the nursery says, "You want to take him to your wife?" And so he comes out of there holding them like footballs, head in this hand, feet across the arms like this.
Yeah.
And I see him in the hallway, and he says, "Dad, can you believe it? They're letting me, I don't know what in the heck I'm doing. They're letting me carry these."
Yep.
Yeah.
We have a son coming in September, and I'm like, I feel bad for my daughter. Like, this kid has 3 years of experience. At least we know something now. But it all works out.
Yeah.
Okay. My last question for you today is for the people, we have a couple questions like this too, for people who feel like they thought they heard God and they went out and tried to do it and it didn't work out. They feel like they missed it. Where do they start? Like, where do they start? Where do they go now?
Yeah.
Now that they thought they listened, it didn't work out, and now they're left in this place of what's next? What do I do now?
Um, yeah, I think when we brand something as a failure,
Mm.
I don't think God does.
Mm.
I think um, God brands experiences as learning. So rather than saying, so talk to me about your failure, I would say, tell me what you learned.
Mm.
Because
That's good.
if you learned
Yeah.
something, then you'll carry that learning to the next place, and uh, and you can in the process. What I feel like sometimes God will take us to a place of rest. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, you've been on the front lines trying to create and innovate and do all of this. Maybe what you need is just some easy. I can do this.
Mm.
Well, there'll be a season of that while there's a regenerating of the
Yeah.
entrepreneurial juices in you,
Mhm.
and one day you'll wake up and say, you know what, I think I'm ready to do this. Okay, that's your next step. Don't feel guilty if he
Mm.
leads you into a pasture. There's a book that I read uh, uh, that really helped me. It opened my eyes to some things about the 23rd Psalm, and the book was titled "A Shepherd's Look at the 23rd Psalm."
Mm.
And he talked about the qualities of sheep and what shepherds do
Yeah.
in managing their sheep. And one of the things that shepherds do, sheep will not rest
Mm.
on their own. It's the shepherd that has to lead them to a quiet place, lead them
Mm.
to a quiet stream, lead
Yeah.
them to a place they can bed down.
Yeah.
And sometimes God's work is to lead us to a quiet place. And the if we have a definition that says, if I'm not accomplishing something, I'm not doing anything.
Mm.
If I'm, this is sort of laziness personified. I think, I think God says, no,
Yeah.
it's rest.
Mm.
And part of our faith is to trust God even in the seasons of rest that he gives us so that we can do greater things for him.
I do have one more question. Where do you feel like that restlessness comes from? Because I was talking to somebody the other day that's in our group. If you're not in a group, get in a group.
Mhm.
And he's like, I feel bad when I'm not doing something. I feel like I'm being lazy when I'm not trying to do something or accomplish something or make money or further something along.
Yeah.
Um, so how do we address that restlessness in ourselves?
Well, I would ask a question. Have you ever taken, if you feel this restlessness,
Mm-hmm.
have you ever taken a personality profile test?
Mm.
Because what, no matter which one you take, they have an ability to measure certain elements of our personality. And if you have an activator aspect of your personality,
Yeah.
you're going to be frustrated if you're not. What are we doing? What are we accomplishing? How do
Yeah.
I do this? And if you're that person, you're probably making to-do lists and you're checking off your to-do list during the day.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't get everything checked off, you're frustrated at the end of the day, feeling you haven't accomplished it.
Yeah.
And I think of Mary and Martha when, Jesus was at their home,
Yeah.
and Mary comes to Jesus and says, don't you say that Martha's not doing anything?
Yeah.
And he says, Mary, Martha chose the better way,
Mm.
chose the better way. So the reality is you're not lazy or unproductive if you're resting in God. Now, if
Yeah.
you're lazy and you're resting because you're frustrated or upset or you've given up, you pulled yourself out of the game,
Mm.
that's not that's not going to give you rest.
Yeah.
But there is a rest that God gives.
Yeah.
And that rest brings peace and comfort and restoration to a tired soul.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your wisdom, Pastor
So
Tom.
my
We
pleasure.
love having you here and glad you're a part of what we do, even on a level that not everybody sees all the time. But I know we have better pastors because of you, and we're very appreciative.
Thank you. I love this
of
place. Love you.
Yeah.
And your little girl was so
She
cute
is
today.
she's getting real sassy. It's a wild ride right now.
She got her dad just wrapped
Oh my
around that
gosh.
finger.
She would let me say goodbye today, but it's like,
Yeah.
what are you going to do? It's my favorite thing in the world.
Guess what? It'll always be that way. I got
Yes.
2 of them.
Yes.
I love them. They're married, but I get to do life with them, and it's so fun.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I love watching her grow up.
Yep.
So thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
If you missed the message, we'll have a link in the description so you can watch it, kind of see what this conversation was based on. And we'll see you next week in the green room.